Hey everyone, thanks so much for joining us for the Quick Pass Fantastic Forum virtual. I'm really excited to be here and I'm really excited to have you join us. My name is Pete Bretton. I'm the Senior Director of Customer and Product Marketing at Ninja One. And I want to talk to you a bit today about endpoint hardening, specifically how to automate endpoint hardening. This is primarily a slide presentation, so we do have deeper dives on really how to accomplish this with the tools that you have today. So if you're interested, please feel free to reach out to Ninja and we can get those resources over to you. I'm going to jump in today directly talking about what I think is one of the most important and overlooked factors of device management, and that is the whole process around endpoint hardening. Device hardening and sort of the basics of cyber hygiene are core factors of security solution effectiveness. What do I mean by that? Well, you know, investments in managing your devices with a security position in mind have an outstanding impact on your overall security posture. And investments here have a much higher return on that security investment than really anything else that you can do from a security perspective. The big problem that we're seeing in the market, though, is that these fundamentals aren't being delivered on. They need work. When people think about security, quite often they're thinking about AV and EDR and more advanced solutions. But there's a lot you can do at the most fundamental level that's going to have a really, really big impact on your client security. Now, what we have here is a chart of the major US speaking countries and their recommendations to SMB and mid-market companies for cybersecurity. Now, this doesn't include sort of process and people stuff, things like security awareness training or process related stuff. These are the technology recommendations that they have. But what you'll see is that there's a lot of overlap between them, and they're all very basic. They're the fundamentals of security, right? So things like taking backups, patching everything, making sure that you have visibility and control over the applications that are used in your environments, making sure drives are encrypted and endpoints are hardened, making sure you have control over your users, which I know is really hard, but it is definitely a recommendation, making sure MFA is enabled, making sure you do have those more advanced security solutions in place, having control over your secure portal media, and enabling the firewall. Now, saying this to you, our MSP partners, probably isn't going to blow any minds, right? You've all heard these recommendations before, but these fundamentals are not being delivered on at scale in a comprehensive way across many, if not most, environments. And so these align very closely with the recommendations I'm going to make today, but keep in mind that these are the recommendations your clients are hearing, if they're paying any attention at all to cybersecurity. And they're great opportunities for you to get in the door and highlight the need to build out a security program. This chart here comes from a recent report from Microsoft that talks about the key cyber resiliency issues and the percent of companies that are not complying with them. And so what you see here is, for example, almost half of SMB and mid-market companies don't have usable backups in place. Even more, so 50% here have unmanaged and legacy systems. They don't know all the systems in their environment. Many of them may be no longer supported, which is again a security risk. About half, if not more, aren't using EDR. The vast majority of SMB companies aren't using patching and vulnerability management solutions. So they're not really delivering on probably the single most effective thing you can do from a security perspective. And then, again, almost all companies have a lack of local admin password management controls. And again, 98% here have excessive admin credentials found. This is just a reinforcement of that previous slide. It doesn't match up one-to-one, but the point here is that those fundamentals of endpoint and device security are just not being met. And that's a huge security risk and a huge opportunity for managed service providers to come in and tell a security story and prove to them that, prove to their clients that there is an opportunity to be more secure with a relatively small investment. A little bit more fear, uncertainty, and doubt here. 57% of breaches could have been avoided through patching. 74% of companies say they can't patch fast enough. And 34% of breach victims knew that they were vulnerable. This actually comes from ServiceNow here. The point to be made here is that patching is a big deal. And again, as MSPs, you know that patching is a big deal. But again, these fundamentals are not being delivered on in many situations. And now we know MSPs have a hard focus on patching, that it's a superpower of many MSPs. And so this may be slightly less relevant to you, but these are, again, great statistics you can bring to your clients to prove the value that you are delivering from a security perspective. And if you happen to not be focused on patching, if that's not really a superpower of yours, it is a reason to refocus there and make sure you're delivering. All right, second to last one here before we jump into the recommendations is not only is patching a big deal, but it's becoming more so. And the speed at which you need to patch is increasing. This is a chart that shows the number of days it takes between disclosure and exploit for known vulnerabilities. And you can see in 2017, the average was about 5 days. And in 2022, it was down to about 3. So the speed at which you patch is becoming more and more important. Now, yeah, the difference between 5 and 3 days is not that much. But if you think about it in terms of percentages, it's 40% shorter time. And so having an aggressive patching schedule and strategy as part of your overall security strategy is becoming more and more critical, because your room for error is decreasing every day. Now the last stat slide before we jump into the recommendations here. Again, going back to Microsoft here, according to Microsoft, 98% of attacks could be protected against through basic security hygiene. And again, that's things like enforcing MFA, making sure your devices are patched, making sure that there aren't an overwhelming number of unused admin credentials, that sort of thing. So the reason we're talking about this is because security fundamentals are critical to your client security. They're in general not being met in a comprehensive manner. And if you invest here and do so in a comprehensive, strategic way that scales across your clients, you're going to get an outstanding return on your security investment, with the vast majority of attacks being able to be addressed just by these basic security hygiene efforts. So let's jump into the actual recommendations here. And we'll start with, what do we mean by device hardening? We've already seen a little bit of that in the previous slides, but specifically device hardening is going to cover 5 areas: patching, application management, device user management or local user management, configuration management, and backup. The reason I include this here is because a lot of times when I'm talking about device hardening with someone, they know what it means, but they don't really have kind of a hard definition in their head. So it's nice to level set and just say, realistically, any changes to a device that help improve the device's security are going to fall under that category of device hardening. These 5 here, really critical. These are the ones you're going to spend your time on. These are the ones you're going to focus on. It doesn't mean, that all the other stuff that you do around security isn't important. Things like user management or security awareness training or your EDR. All of the other stuff you do around security is still critical, but when we're talking about device hardening, this is what we're talking about. So let's jump in and we'll start with patching. So again, at the beginning of the presentation, I mentioned that we do have some deep dive resources on these. Patching is one of those. We do have a couple of really great assets I recommend you reach out and ask about. But I wanted to do a brief overview of our patching recommendations. And again, we have a whole guide on this. But the first is, if you're using a solution that allows you to separate your scan and deployment schedule for patching, make sure that you're scanning for patches daily. The big thing here is if you can get the data about your vulnerabilities into your system so that you can see your vulnerability data, your vulnerability scores, and so you can see your patches in your system, that gives you an opportunity to take action outside of your normal patching schedule. That visibility is really, really critical, because if a really critical patch comes in and you're not going to actually deploy patches for another week or 2 weeks or a month, having the visibility and being able to say, yeah, we have this, patch with a CVSS score of 9, let's go ahead and deploy that immediately. It allows you to take action outside of your normal schedule. That being said, we do also recommend deploying patches as aggressively as possible. The recommendation that we have is generally weekly, if possible. There are situations where you can't do that, where you have SLAs with clients where that's not allowed. But wherever possible, building in a weekly patch deployment is really going to help you get those endpoints that you manage secure. We also recommend rebooting almost as aggressively. In this case, you really do have to take the end user experience into account, but you can't trust the end user to reboot their machine, and you do need to make sure that you are rebooting aggressively, because a lack of a reboot is the number one reason that patches fail to install. And so at some point, if you're not rebooting these machines, you can get into a state where you have to get hands-on with the device to actually go in and fix patching, and you don't want that to happen. So make sure you're automating reboots, and make sure you're doing it as aggressively as your clients will allow, and in such a way that it doesn't impact your clients and users. OS and third-party patches are both critical. You do want to make sure that anything you can patch, you are patching. Your OS, your drivers, your third-party applications, all of them across your Windows, Mac, and Linux devices. Make sure that all of them are patched if possible. And frankly, the OS patching, that's somewhere that you do need to be aggressive and do need to reboot aggressively. Third-party applications, less so. You can be slightly less aggressive there. And then last but not least, no matter what tool you're using, validate and report on those patches. All RMM vendors are going to say that their patching is works perfectly. Ninja as well. You should still go and validate. You should still spot check. Make sure that the patches that you think are being deployed are being deployed. Dig into it occasionally just to make sure that everything that you're doing from a patching perspective is actually working. Because if your end user gets breached, or if your client gets breached, you're going to be responsible. So make sure you're validating that the patches that you're installing are installing, and you're getting the results you want. Because again, patching is probably the number one thing you can do to secure your client endpoints. So number 2 on that list was manage applications. This is again something your RMM will do very well for you. And there's a lot you can do here around applications. So where patching helps you reduce your known vulnerabilities and mitigate those, managing applications can help you reduce your unknown vulnerabilities, right? Because patching, we're going to identify things that we already have a patch for and then deploy them, right? But if you are effectively managing applications, you can remove applications that may be a threat to your client endpoint. So doing things like removing unsupported applications, that's going to get rid of vulnerabilities that you may not be aware of simply because you're not supporting these. They're no longer there. They can't be a vulnerability. So making sure that you are identifying and removing those unsupported applications is a great basic security step. In addition, you can use your RMM to monitor for potential attack vectors. So a really good example here is, let's say you use TeamViewer for your remote access solution. You can set up your RMM to detect any other remote access solutions that are being installed, and at a minimum alert you, but in a better situation, automatically remediate that. If suddenly you're seeing AnyDesk show up on a computer, you can detect that and then automatically uninstall that. But we know that remote access solutions are used to as tools by threat actors. So detect any that you're not using and remove them. Similarly, if you're using an RMM, you can detect any other RMMs that are being installed and do the same. Block it from being installed or uninstall it immediately. So again, if you're using Ninja and someone's installing RMM 123, you detect that agent and you automatically remove it, because unless your client's moving to another MSP, which is a possibility, as far as you're concerned, that's an attack. This is a vector of attack that you can detect and remove. And there are a lot of solutions out there that you can do this with, just simply by detecting when software is installed and making sure you have the visibility and then the control to remove it. You can also really critically deploy and monitor your security applications. So Ninja, for example, integrates with Webroot, Bitdefender, and SentinelOne. But even if you aren't using an integrated solution, you can still use your RMM to deploy all of your security stack. But then, more importantly, make sure that it's enforced, right? So making sure you're monitoring the processes to make sure they're up, but also, again, if you detect that it's been removed, automatically reinstalling it, or at least at a minimum, alerting and making sure you're aware of it so you can go and resolve the issue. And then finally here, enabling built-in security applications. So for example, turning on the Windows firewall is a really easy thing that you can do to help improve security. So being able to have the visibility into the applications that you have and then managing them effectively is a really great step in delivering on the fundamentals of security. All right, managing local users. This one's a little bit more limited on the RMM side, but if you're using an MDM solution or if your clients are using the Microsoft suite like Business Premium or Enterprise, you can use Intune, for example, or the Microsoft suite to actually do even more here around managing users. But let's say you only have an RMM, you can manage local users here, doing things like removing the default admin and unused admin accounts, or even unused user accounts, is a great thing that you can do to remove potential attack vectors. You can also create service accounts so that you have this non-default admin account that you can use to get privileged access. You can use your RMM to rotate that local service account's password and monitor for things like privilege escalation or new user creation. Again, just giving you the visibility to make sure that there aren't funky things going on with a user account on an endpoint. In many cases here, you're going to just alert and then look into it, but there are also automatic remediations you can do here. So for example, detecting, a lot of failed login attempts in a short period of time and disabling that account. So a lot you can do from a hardening perspective here around users, particularly around monitoring. All right, so this screen here is kind of meant to be a screenshot screen. We're not recommending that you do every single one of these, but these are examples of real life device hardening activities that our partners have identified to us and that we've seen in the wild. So things around account protection, device configuration, software management, and auditing that can help you get ideas to begin on your device hardening journey. So again, not every one of these will be applicable in every environment, and they may need to be adjusted to fit your use cases. But these are all ideas that you can use to go and begin your device hardening journey. So doing things like enforcing least privilege access, changing the default admin accounts, enforcing strong passwords, disabling USBs, enabling secure boot, making sure that the disk is encrypted with something like BitLocker, enabling the firewall, removing old executables, auditing your device hardening, really critical here. So again, the idea here is take a screenshot of this, and that'll give you some ideas as you build out your own journey. So last but not least here, we have backup everything. This is so important. If you do nothing else, make sure you're backing up all of your client endpoints, because in a worst case scenario, if you have backups and they are in the cloud, then you're in pretty good shape because you can always restore that data, brick the laptop, reset it, and get your data back, right? So identify those endpoints with critical data, make sure you're backing up all of your devices, making sure you have a 3-2-1 backup, 3 copies, 2 different media, 1 offsite. And then if you can, make sure you're managing and alerting from a single pane of glass. That's going to give you more visibility and control and make sure that your technicians have a better visibility into their backups. So before I jump to the next screen, I do want to just wrap up this section here. All of these recommendations are generally something you can do with the tools that you have in place today. Most MSPs have a backup solution, they have an RMM, and many of you have clients who are using, for example, the Microsoft suite, who have something like Business Premium or some of the enterprise products, which allow you to do not just what we've talked about, but more from a device hardening perspective. The biggest recommendation here is, if you are not looking at device hardening comprehensively today, start small, start building out a plan to harden endpoints as they're set up. So, you can use your RMM to automate device setup. When you're doing so, make sure you're including device hardening configurations in there. Make sure that you have a strategy for looking at these things on an ongoing basis through monitoring and alerting. So making sure that all these configurations are configured and stay the way that you configured them. So make sure you're validating that all of the hardening exercises that you're going through are working. And then make sure that you're reviewing and adding to it over time so that you can really lock down those endpoints and ensure that your EDR, for example, doesn't have to work as hard as it might otherwise. So that's the set of recommendations there to wrap up. For those of you who have not used Ninja One in the past, the Ninja One platform is called the Unified IT Management Platform. And we are really focused on delivering a centralized IT management experience. We've built Ninja One from the ground up as a proprietary solution, all seamlessly integrated, focused on primarily remote monitoring and endpoint management. And anyone who buys Ninja One, you get that core solution in orange there. So, our RMM includes monitoring, alerting, patch management, software management, scripting, and automation. Anyone who buys Ninja gets that. But then one of the best things about Ninja is, and our platform is its modular nature. So you can pull in remote access or endpoint security or backup or ticketing or documentation as needed. But if you have a best-in-class backup and you love it and you don't want to move it, don't use Ninja's backup, right? Bring your own in. And the modular nature of our platform makes it really easy to manage multiple technologies from different stacks, or go for that fully unified view that is seamless and allows automation across workflows. Last but not least, we do integrate with pretty much every major MSP solution out there. So your core PSAs like Autotask, Manage, and Halo, your endpoint security products like SentinelOne and Bitdefender, and remote access solutions like Splashtop and TeamViewer. So that's the Ninja One platform. I do encourage you to engage with us in chat and to reach out to us for those deeper dives on endpoint hardening and patch management best practices. They are more focused on how to deliver those through your RMM. I think that can be really helpful to get you started on your device hardening journey. With that, thank you again for joining us for Quick Pass's fantastic forum virtual. I hope this information was helpful, and we hope to hear from you.